I bought a Starlink Mini for my traveling and it kinda sucks. But that's because of my needs living and traveling out of this car full time, so the product itself is probably doing exactly what it's supposed to. So the problem is when I'm traveling, I don't actually need this to download anything or to watch Netflix. I need it to upload stuff. And for that purpose, this is actually slower than what it is if I'm using my phone's mobile data for uploads. But that scenario would only be true if I had perfect reception everywhere, which is not the case. Because the places I like to travel to is quite remote, there's usually not that much people there, and that goes hand in hand with not having too good of a cell reception service. And in that case, there's actually not a product which is better than this, but it's still not perfect. But it doesn't really have to be perfect, which is why I still bought this, even though it doesn't really fulfill all of my needs. And since I bought the Mini, everything I need is electricity from inside of the car. And whilst this is running, it's using about 40 watts. And this is a great spot to test the Starlink because the conditions are not perfect, but it's not bad enough that anything is working against the hardware. And if I scan the sky in this location, the only thing which is kind of blocking the reception is the top of that mountain. Which gives me a 95% score, which is not perfect, but it's completely realistic in a country full of mountains. And I just ran a speed test and I got download speeds at 200 megabits per second and upload speeds at 30. So I reran the test and now I have 180 and 20. But numbers on a screen only gets you thus far because the only thing that actually matters is real life experience. And my experience from this specific spot right here is I started to upload a 4K video file, which is 8.7 gigabytes this morning at 6 o'clock. And that was actually not fully uploaded to YouTube servers until 12 o'clock. And that is actually slower than my phone. But yet again, it would not be faster sharing Wi-Fi from my phone in this location. So straight off the bat, I can run a speed test on someone else's page than Starlink's own page. And on this page, my download is 43 and upload is 16.16. But then again, I'm starting to think, does this have something to do with my location? Because right now I'm 69 degrees north, which is far into the Arctic Circle. So I'm wondering if someone has any experience with using these far north. And during the upload, I had the exact same weather as I do now, but I will also test during different hours of the day and see if that makes a difference. But the reason why I said this sucks is because of the price of the product, the price of the service, and also the speed of the upload. But yet again, what kind of different options is there? And the first option is cellular, which is not really working in remote locations, so that's not an option. And the second option would be to use free Wi-Fi every time you pass through a town, which is what I've been doing till this point. And for me, the third option is this, but the subscription fee is like 90 euros every single month. And how much would it cost for me to drive into a town every now and then to use free Wi-Fi? And even though I'm trying to travel on a budget, going for option number 3 is actually not motivated by money. It's actually motivated by time, or time saved. And this is where the question whether or not you need a Starlink really comes down to what you actually need, because if I travel from remote place to remote place to remote place, spread out over, let's say, a week, and in that time I would upload 2 videos. 1, 2. But every time I'm stopping in a remote place, if I need to upload those videos, I would need to drive into town A and into town B, instead of just doing the remote and scenic route. So with me being the introverted nature lover I am, this is actually a no-brainer. And traveling in an old car using 20 miles per gallon or 14 liters per 100 kilometer, I'm actually saving money by not doing all of these detours. And I also pay for an unlimited data plan for my phone, which I can now cancel and get something cheaper because I'm in theory just moving this bill over to the Starlink. And that's just traveling inside of this country, because when I start to travel outside of Norway, this is going to open up a whole new world of connections. So does it actually suck? No, it's the best product available for my needs, but it has a lot of potential of becoming better and faster. And a different question is also whether or not I should get it permanently installed somewhere, or if I might as well just bring it out when I'm going to use it. But the upload speeds is actually not a problem, because I have a tendency of sleeping a full night like a normal human. So if the upload takes like 5-6 hours whilst I'm sleeping, that doesn't really matter. but that's in perfect conditions. So the question is also how this will work in snow, rain and clouds. But also, living in the country I'm in a lot of different valleys, meaning I will have mountains blocking all of this part of the sky and all of this part of the sky, giving me a smaller window being connected to the passover of the satellites. But we're not lacking mountains and valleys in this country, so I can actually drive off and test that right now. I guess I can run a speed test here as well because there's mountains on all sides, but I'm still not right underneath one. And this time I'll just set it up atop the roof so that no one can blame me for not trying properly. After running a couple of minutes, the application will tell you what kind of orientation to place the dish. So I'll just wait for that before I do any testing. And whilst waiting for that, I'll scan the sky and see how many % of the satellites are hidden behind mountains. And it's almost the same results as on the other side of the islands, but right now this mountain is blocking about 5%. And after scanning the sky, the Starlink now tells me to orientate the dish like around 180 degrees. And it lets you know when it's perfect. And now I'll run a speed test on the laptop, but at the same time I'll also run a speed test on the Starlink application. And it's 2 minutes past midnight, so I'll just assume that the traffic on all of these pages are kind of low. And the upload speed on both of these now are pretty much 11 megabit per second. But the download speed on this is like almost 200, whilst on this is kind of low. So I'll just open YouTube and I can actually just start one of my videos, turn on 4K. Yeah, this is loading perfectly fine. But like I said, these numbers don't really mean anything to me because the only thing that really matters is how this functions in real life. So I'll continue using this to upload stuff in a bunch of different locations and environments, but I'm also kind of eager to hear what kind of numbers people actually pull from these tests in different parts of the world. And on this trip, I will continue on heading north for a couple of months. So I will actually figure out myself as well if the upload speed is due to the fact that I'm this far north, or if this is just realistically what I can expect from this. And like I said, I can solve this by uploading whilst I'm sleeping, but there's also a second solution to that problem. And this is one of the times where traveling with a really old and slow car is actually a positive thing, because instead of just putting this up when I'm going to use it, I can in fact install it permanently on the roof. And this car is not exactly flying down the road, making it a lot easier for this to stay connected to the satellites whilst driving. And one of the positives with uploading to YouTube is if you lose your connection, the upload does not fail. It will carry on from where you left off as soon as you have Wi-Fi again. And that is something to keep in mind in a country with a bunch of tunnels. So sadly enough, this video will actually not have a conclusion about the product because I can't really tell before I've used it for, let's for example say, the whole summer. But what I can say is you should really question yourself whether or not you actually need this. Me, for example, started to think about this maybe 3-4 months ago, and I didn't pull the plug before I had done like 7 weeks in this full time. So I've had some time to make up my mind by now. So during the rest of my traveling, this will now be on a rough trail period. So I can take the bullet on this so you don't get buyer's remorse for something that you really don't need. And if Starlink is anything like the other subscriptions I need to have, like everything I have from Adobe, they're probably going to raise the price before 2025 is over. And now I'll get going with another upload in this location, and there is actually 0% blockage. Okay, maybe 1%. So what I'm looking for now is actually a couple of things. People with real life experience with this in the Arctic or Antarctic for that matter, and people's experience with mounting these perfectly flat on the roof, or if I might as well just pull it out when I'm going to use it. None pun intended. And with that being said, it's now the 7th of July 2025, so let the testing begin. And if it's not clear, I'm paying for this myself, so I'm free to shit talk this as much as I like if it does not live up to my expectations.